Imagine being in a narrow space. Now make that space even smaller by being a person of color in classical music. Let's go even smaller now with a population of Black Americans who are in love with early music.
When I came along, I believe I was the only professional of color who was Black in the field. And so there wasn't any issue of diversity.
We're going to hear from performers about their experiences in this field. And there are lots of good intentions popping up all over the country. I'll tell you about a few of them. And welcome pianist and professor Dr. Artina McCain to the show. She recently won a big award.
I'm so honored to be in that top category of the top 9 albums that submitted for the year 2020.
We'll talk about that and some other things, too. From the Second Street Dreams audio network, this is the March-April 2021 edition of Classical Music in Color. News, information, and music about people of color in classical music. I'm Judelyn Gibson. Dr. Artina McCain, a pianist, professor, curator, and an award winner. She's performing a scherzo by Coleridge Taylor Perkinson. We're going to hear her entire performance of that piece in a few minutes. I first want to introduce you to her and her many works. We spoke in February while she was in the middle of producing a virtual Black History Month program for the Austin Chamber Music Center.
Hello, Judelyn, and thank you so much for having me on the show today. My name is Artina McCain, and I am the coordinator of the keyboard area at the University of Memphis. And I teach applied piano, which is just individual instruction for those who might not know, pedagogy and chamber music.
You have won an award. All I know is that it's a gold award.
I released an album called Heritage, and it is a compilation of works by American composers. So I released that at the end of 2020. It's still out there. You can check it out, Spotify, YouTube, or if you want to give me some dollars, you can buy it off my website. And I submitted it for the Global Music Awards, which is an international organization that reviews artist albums every year. And at the end of January, I found out that I won the gold category, which is the top category, only given to 9 artists. And you know what, Judelyn, they printed all the artists that applied. It's just pages and pages and pages of artists from gold all the way to silver. And so I'm so honored to be in that top category of the top 9 albums that submitted for the year 2020.
Did you win it before?
I had won it before with Martin, yes.
With your husband. Martin's your husband.
Yes. I didn't explain who Martin is. Martin is my husband. He is the other half of the McCain duo on bass trombone.
Have mercy. What does this mean for you?
Well, it's just, an amazing honor. I think it's sort of like any competition you win. It's like a notch on your belt. It's something that says that people appreciate your art and they value the work and the quality of art that you're putting out into our musical world. So it's just amazing to be honored in that way. And especially since there's so few, I'm the only pianist there. So I'm just thrilled and really happy because the project was sort of a long time coming. So it's amazing to be honored in that way. And I hope, when things are back to playing live concerts, that I'll be able to tour the album like most artists would do and be able to get more accolades for it.
When do you think you'll be able to perform before live audiences?
Well, I don't know. I have been very fortunate during the pandemic to have lots of virtual recitals. I've given some recitals at University of Missouri. My husband and I did a program for University of Michigan. I've been to Oklahoma, or OU, as they say. And that has been amazing. And actually, I've met a lot of new people that way and probably had the opportunity to interact with more people and more people be able to hear my music than if, I had to get on a plane all the time. So I have been keeping busy in the virtual concert tour world.
It sounds like it's done well for you, as it has for a number of artists who have been able to expand their reach beyond their normal audience. Did you find that as well?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, I think at the end of the year, I think when more people were kind of catching on to this, I probably played a concert, I'm doing quotations, every week. And so I will have turned into quite the recording artist. I mean, not that we weren't recording before, but now I find myself making videos all the time and trying to prepare for upcoming events. Even as we speak, I have an upcoming event in Boston, which of course is just from my living room. And I have to prepare some videos for that. And also like Austin Chamber Music Black Composers Concert, which also from my living room, but we have to prepare videos for that. And there's, so many more. We're doing Music Teachers National Association, have to prepare videos for that in March. And so there's been lots of opportunities to record, to do video recording, which isn't something that I had been doing really before outside of just, videoing a live performance. So that's been really cool to learn about that aspect of being a recording artist.
You talked a little bit before about the Heritage album. Tell me more. Who's on it? How did you curate it?
Sure. So it's just me. It's all solo piano. And I curated it because I really have an interest in American music, and I like to explore the music from my heritage. So that, both American and African American. And so I have those influences on the album. George Walker is on the album, and I've been a long time fan and admirer of the Walker family. I did my dissertation on George Walker's Piano Sonata No. 1. And since that time, I had the opportunity to play with his son, Gregory Walker, in the Violin Sonata. And so it just seemed fitting that I would play something by George Walker on the solo album. So I did the Prelude and Caprice, which is a great piece. So if anybody plays piano, I'll say it's one of his quote unquote easier works. It's a shorter work. It's still really difficult, but I think it's manageable for the advanced pianist that wants to dip their toe into something a little bit different. And then I played Charles Griffith's 3-Tone Pictures, which are beautiful pieces in American Impressionism. I also have a set of spirituals, and one which I actually arranged partially, The Amazing Grace. I added Margaret Bond's Troubled Water. That's a piece that I had just been playing for so long, really like a decade, and wanted to record it and just have, my own take on that piece, my own rendition. And then I had Coleridge Taylor Perkinson's Scherzo, which is a very large work for piano. And I think a lot of people don't know many large concert works or competitive works by Black composers. So that was really important to me as well.
We'll continue our conversation with Artina after you hear her amazing performance of Scherzo, composed by Coleridge Taylor Perkinson. Artina McCain performing Scherzo by Coleridge Taylor Perkinson. It's from her latest album, Heritage. Where can we get the album?
Well, you can get it from me, which is how I love for people to get it. If you want to support artists, it's always great to buy direct from the website. So my website is artinamccain.com. Of course, you can listen to it for free as well on Spotify, YouTube, or any other streaming service that you use.
So what is the full name of the album in case someone would like to purchase it and listen?
Yeah, so the full name of the album is Heritage, an American Musical Legacy.
Did you record it in your house, or how did you do it?
Well, I actually had recorded it pre-pandemic, so it was something that I had been working on for a while. Life just sort of got in the way of me actually publishing it. But then look at this, sitting at home, you find yourself with a lot more time to birth projects that you maybe hadn't birthed before. And so that was first on my list, was to publish the album. So I was super happy to have the time and the mental space to do it.
Artina McCain, make that Dr. McCain. Those of you who've earned doctorates will understand the importance of using that title. Her new album is called Heritage, an American Musical Legacy. Links are on the Classical Music and Color page on secondstreetdreams.com. Coming up, they talked about the struggles within a struggle for black musicians and performers specializing in early music. But not before I tell you about some mainstream organizations who say they're making an effort to diversify. There are lots of good intentions to diversify popping up all over the country. Before we get there, though, here's something that goes under the heading, there's still some work to do. We will do better. The last 4 words of a statement from Oberlin Conservatory in Ohio, apologizing for what it calls its mistake in posting a flyer for a celebration of black artistry for Black History Month. The flyer featured an all-white group performing. Here's where the apology is a little off the mark. The apology statement also said it was a mistake to, quote, post this event out of context and without pictures of the composers themselves, and we are deeply sorry. End quote. Moving on. A new organization has been formed to raise the number of African American and Latinx musicians on professional stages in America and perhaps around the world. This is an example of putting good intentions into action. The group is called the National Instrumentalist Mentoring and Advancement Network. I spoke with one of the founding members.
Stanford Thompson. I'm the founding volunteer for the National Instrumentalist Mentoring and Advancement Network.
What is the network all about?
The National Instrumentalist Mentoring and Advancement Network, NIMON, is a new national initiative whose purpose is to create a level playing field for BIPOC classical music instrumentalists in the United States. And by BIPOC, I specifically mean Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Classical musicians that identify in those categories. And by developing a coalition of diverse professionals and organizations from around the country, NIMON will align, promote, and develop equitable opportunities and inclusive environments to advance BIPOC instrumentalists with a particular attention to the underrepresented ethnicities to thrive in the field of classical music.
As I understand it, only less than 2% of orchestral musicians are BIPOC, mostly Black. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that overall that percentage is about 11%. However, the total percentage, yes, 2% of those classical musicians are Black. About another 3.5% are Latinx, and the remaining would identify as Asian. and mostly East Asian. In terms of how I feel about it, I think it is unfortunate that, for example, the percentage of Black people in American orchestras has stayed stagnant for the past 25 years, hovering around 2%. So to not see more progress in that regard, when there has been a huge increase in the number of Black musicians on the stage through organizations like the Spinks organization and our music schools and conservatories, to see that number remain the same on professional stages is quite disappointing.
What does your group plan to do? What are the structures? How do you plan to make this happen?
So we essentially have two parallel paths that we will operate. The first path is more specific to the BIPOC musicians by building a bridge of support and mentorship and training for them to be able to navigate that journey from student to professional, really assisting them in removing barriers to achieving success in the field. So we're going to match those musicians with advancement opportunities, get them connected to mentors, and facilitate organizations to cultivate relationships with these musicians in order to help them advance. The second path that I mentioned, that we will provide forms and resources and training to our member organizations on dismantling the structural inequities, the biases, the systemic racism that are ingrained in their organizational policies and practices that ultimately prevent BIPOC musicians from getting access to equitable opportunities and an environment where they can thrive.
Can you give me an example of that affects these BIPOC musicians and not getting in these orchestras?
Yeah, so I think this happens all along the way, where organizations are happy to provide access to good conductors or good teachers if the musician can cross some type of line, and in some cases be the most competitive of those musicians in a particular area. So for example, in Philadelphia, to be a member of the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra, you would need to come in and successfully audition. And as a trumpet player myself, I would have to be in the top 4 trumpet players in the Philadelphia region, which consists of New Jersey, Delaware, and most of Pennsylvania, in order to get that seat. And if I grew up in a school that did not have a music program, or did not even offer the trumpet in my home music program, I'm already at a disadvantage. If my family didn't have money for private lessons, I'm at a disadvantage, or money to buy a quality instrument. So that's what we mean by there are some barriers in place that we believe organizations can be more thoughtful in solving those problems.
And you're hoping to get 100 more people by the end of this month. How's that going?
So, so far we have had dozens of conversations and interests from organizations. Also, over the past year and a half that we've been planning, we've been building a lot of relationships along the way. I'm pretty confident we will get to and surpass our goal, and we'll continue to build our membership over the year.
The ultimate goal is to what?
Ultimate goal is to help BIPOC classical musicians enter the professional world of performance. That could mean them playing in a professional orchestra. It could mean them being a top freelance musician in Cincinnati. It could mean them getting a teaching job at a local community college or a local university. So we define that as the musician can support them and a family on the salary that they make by performing on their instrument.
Stanford Thompson of the National Instrumentalist Mentoring and Advancement Network. You heard him say he plays the trumpet. He's also the founder and executive director of Play on Philly. It's a music education program for students in underserved areas throughout Philadelphia. If you want to know more, there's a link on the Classical Music in Color page on secondstreetdreams.com. The Fall River Symphony in Massachusetts is playing an entire season of music by Black composers. The decision to do so has been in the works for a while, according to music director Douglas McRae Daniels. Daniels, who is Black, told the Herald News that after the racial unrest erupting all over the place, he couldn't be content with merely putting out a statement of support. He had to put that support in action. This is by no means a complete list. There are sure to be others making the effort. Now, let's go way, way back in time to early music. It's a period generally considered to be from around 500 to 1400, with medieval and early Baroque music too. In February, in honor of Black History Month, Early Music America and the Handel and Haydn Society live-streamed a panel discussion called Black Musicians in Early Music. The panel included Joseph McCarty, a conductor, harpsichordist, and organist. Countertenor Reginald Mobley. Patricia Ann Neely, who plays the viola da gamba and other instruments of the period. Soprano Rachel Redman. Bass baritone and composer Jonathan Woody. And the moderator, baritone Dana Whiteside. They zoomed in from Boston, New York, and Paris for the panel discussion. Here's Rachel Redman telling how one performance introduced her to early music and eventually her career.
We did St. Matthew Passion, and it was just the most amazing thing I'd ever heard. I think it was the soprano aria with the flute, and I just was like, what is this? This is just the most amazing. I don't think I'd really heard Baroque music before, and that really inspired me when I can't remember what age. Well, I must have been about 12.
A very young age.
Yeah, and I thought, that's really incredible, and how do these people do that? And then it got me thinking, is this a job that I could do? Is this a job that people do? Do people get paid to do this? Could I do this instead of being an accountant like my dad wants?
Jonathan Woody says it took him a minute or two to realize his passion.
I sort of got the bug. I was also a childhood musician, not in quite as organized a way as a sort of Royal National Choir, although if we had such a thing here in this country, it would have been great. But I sang in my church growing up and at school, and whenever there was a piece that really sort of particularly moved me, it happened to be a piece written before 1800. And so it was not actually until finishing my undergrad that I sort of realized that I'm the kind of person who should be in the early music profession.
The moderator, Dana Whiteside, took on the discussion from there, including some thorny questions about inclusion and acceptance as Black performers in early music.
Talk about your experiences in one of three realms. Either in, I'll just say it because it's, encountering a barrier to access yourself. one possibility. What role you have had in creating greater bridges to diversity and access? That's another possibility you can chat about. Or third opportunity, thinking about how you've thought about or been involved with engaging our allies in this work. And I'll leave it open to you to jump in as you'd like.
I guess
or you can change the topic if you want.
No, I'll go ahead and start. And I think it's good to talk about these things. These three. I think I'll probably pick the third, just in how I've been able to engage with allies, and that's mostly by I've tried my best to be as patient and open-minded as possible to seem like someone that people can talk to about these issues. Like it's obvious that there is a lot of emotional labor going on, and you know for Black people and people of color being asked constantly, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this? Like, what is this? Can I do this spiritual in a concert? And the thing is that if someone isn't there who's willing to answer the question on behalf of everyone else, it might not be answered. And I'm willing to kind of be the one with the kid's glove, to be that ghost of Christmas past, to kind of start that journey, for the allies to kind of open their mind and see where they should be and where they need to be and what work they need to do themselves to create, this inclusive atmosphere in early music. I think my role with Hamlin Hine Society, being involved with EMA, and just all the work I do, just singing with various ensembles, has put me in the place I need to be in order to be that voice or be that answer for those questions. And I think because of the trust I've built with many allies, that I'm feeling comfortable that I can say what you want to hear, but now now that you've had the sugar, let's talk about the medicine and talk about this is where you have gone wrong. These are steps you can take to be a little better. Like, you need to also know where you can grow and not just, I'm not here to hold your hand and tell you that it's okay and pat your head. I'm here to say, you got to keep going. And at some point, I shouldn't have to be there to answer these questions for you.
I can talk about the first element, the barriers. And when you mentioned barriers, you're talking about our experience as in the field. In the field,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, when I came along, I believe I was the only professional of color who was Black in the field. And so there wasn't any issue of diversity. I came to it also with such a great background that I didn't even anticipate what was going to happen to me. I thought I was on an even playing field with everyone. I eventually realized that people were seeing me as someone who was less, that I felt like an interloper of sort. There was less respect for my comments because no one really knew my background. I was never, I wanted so much to be a permanent member of the major groups that were in existence at the time. I was never in that league. I was hired once or twice. And people said that some people said they didn't think that I was serious about it because I had to have a full-time job. I couldn't afford my instruments unless I paid for them. So there was a whole different view. I felt hopeless. And it wasn't until I went to Europe where I felt as if people saw me as a colleague. And it's that's so odd because in Germany, you don't think of that being a welcoming community based on history. But it was certainly a place where I was able to become an empowered musician. And I think now that I'm older and seasoned, I won't put up with people giving me those excuses. Well, you can't do this because you're not really committed. I've made it clear that I am, from my performances and from the amount of time I've spent as a professional. And it's really great now to see that there are not only more people involved of people of color in performing and in teaching, but that we have a voice, and it's a collective voice.
Yeah.
In hearing what Reggie and Patricia have said, I sort of feel like I find myself somewhere in between. I had the great fortune to be able to enter this profession and not feel sort of there were barriers to my entry. And that I have been able to, over the years, build up the kind of early music bona fides that, so that now at this certain point in my professional life, a lot of the organizations out there do consider me, someone regular to work with, somebody that they want to engage. And so what I'm finding now, actually, and to go to part 3 of your question in dealing with allies, is that even once you've gotten in the door, and you've gotten in the door the quote unquote right way, which of course we could talk about the issues with that that exist, but even if you have gotten in the door the right way, what you find is that sometimes the changes that need to come, you hit a wall. You're there because someone asked you to be in the room to push forward and say, here's how we might think of this differently. And when you're in that position and you say that, then they say, well, it turns out we're not going to think about it differently. So I think that is definitely a challenge going forward, which is that when you have people who have offered themselves up as allies, to really hold their feet to the fire and insist that the change that they say they want is change that they're going to be willing to follow through on in creating. So I would say that is definitely a place where a barrier can be erected, which is that sometimes just hiring the person of color and putting them in the room isn't enough to lead to change if everyone else in the room is still committed to the status quo.
I think that it's about a paradigm shift on the point of view of in the point of view of those who run things, me included. I run stuff, about how we recruit, and how do we, if we're finding recruitment hard, as Rachel said, then we go and find people. But I think it's once you decide that this is no longer acceptable to have inequity, then everything can change. But I think it's that once you decide thing, it's that paradigm shift.
You just heard part of the panel discussion about black musicians and early music with baritone Dana Whiteside, conductor and organist Joseph McCarty, countertenor Reginald Mobley, instrumentalist Patricia Ann Neely, soprano Rachel Redmond, and Jonathan Woody, a bass baritone and composer. I'd like to thank Early Music America and the Handel and Haydn Society and the panelists for allowing me to use excerpts from the program Black Musicians in Early Music. Our coda this month is still a big thank you to the doctors and nurses still working tirelessly to keep us alive. The folks who pick up our trash, deliver our food, the workers at the grocery and drugstores, the police, firefighters, and teachers too. Also, credit goes to Amulet, who composed Magnetic Lullaby, the music you heard at the beginning of the program. I want you to know that I've posted a link to the Musical America 2021 Guide to Top Competitions. It's on the Classical Music in Color page on secondstreetdreams.com. Most of you likely know about it already, but there's a bunch, and I mean a bunch of competitions listed. So when you can, take a look and see what competition you might win. I'm Judelyn Gibson. Stay safe, stay healthy, like your life depends on it, because you know it does, even with the vaccine. We are the Second Street Dreams Audio Network on the radio and on the W. Thank you for listening to the March-April 2021 edition of Classical Music in Color.